In a clothing store, a wealthy lady and her son were trying on clothes. The wealthy lady complained that the design of the dress she was trying on was too ugly and unsuitable for someone as rich as her. Just then, a young woman walked out wearing the exact same dress, instantly capturing everyone's attention. The wealthy lady's son was immediately drawn to the young woman's beauty. Seeing that the same dress looked better on someone else, the wealthy lady became furious and directed her anger toward the store manager. Upon realizing that the young woman was Seol-ah, a TV presenter, the wealthy lady quickly pulled her son aside and repeatedly warned him to be cautious of Seol-ah, fearing that her son might be deceived. However, her son, Jin-woo, paid no heed. He had always been determined to get whatever he desired. Little did he know that Seol-ah was an extremely ambitious woman. She was so poor that she could barely afford food, yet she spent 2 million won on a gym membership. Why? Because the gym was frequented by heirs of wealthy families. Seol-ah's ultimate dream was to become the daughter-in-law of a conglomerate family. The receptionist informed Seol-ah that her gym membership had expired and the fee had increased to 3.3 million won. Seol-ah was stunned upon hearing the news, but to maintain her composure and continue her plan to attract wealthy men, she pretended to remain calm and said she would pay immediately. However, after paying the fee, Seol-ah was left with no money at all. She couldn't even afford the bus fare to get home, but she was willing to walk if it meant becoming the daughter-in-law of a wealthy family. She forced a smile to comfort herself, determined to change her life as soon as possible. Seol-ah didn't hesitate to steal the spotlight from her colleagues and was very serious about rejecting confessions from men who didn't own hundreds of billions in assets. Fortunately, her efforts weren't in vain. When the wealthy heir Jin-woo saw Seol-ah on television, he remembered meeting her at the gym and became even more intrigued by her. Jin-woo's mother strongly opposed this, claiming that Seol-ah's mouth was too big. That day, Seol-ah once again went to a gathering spot for the wealthy. Seeing the girls there being pampered and welcomed, Seol-ah wished she could live such a life. Little did she know that her life was about to undergo major changes. When Jin-woo learned that Seol-ah couldn't afford to pay for the exorbitantly priced dress, he told the salesperson that from now on, any dress Seol-ah liked could be taken for free and he would cover all the costs. Watching Seol-ah leave, Jin-woo made up his mind. One day, he abandoned his luxury car to walk alongside Seol-ah. Seol-ah, mistaking him for a poor man, bluntly rejected him, which only made Jin-woo more intrigued. He found it curious that Seol-ah carried clothes worth 5,000 won, but had to take a bus that cost just a few coins. Jin-woo observed Seol-ah carefully. Fair skin, beautiful appearance, long legs, and most importantly, a strong personality. She was exactly his type. He even rode a bus, something he had never done before, just to watch Seol-ah. However, Seol-ah didn't notice him at all. Her mind was preoccupied with the words of a matchmaker who wanted to introduce her to an only son who was a bit rough around the edges. Despite his flaws, he was said to inherit a fortune worth 20 billion won. Initially, Seol-ah hesitated, but when she thought about her poor family background, she became even more determined to marry into a wealthy family. She then messaged the matchmaker to agree to the meeting. To charm the wealthy young man in just one meeting, Seol-ah went to her usual clothing store to buy a dress. However, she was mocked by Jin-woo's mother, Madam Hwa-young, who sneered, asking if the clothes there were suitable for pets and why they were sponsoring such lowly, unqualified people. To everyone's surprise, Seol-ah fired back, saying that the person insulting her was no better than trash, unaware that she was actually insulting her future mother-in-law. Later, Seol-ah arrived at the blind date venue and anxiously sat down. She recalled the matchmaker's warning that the man was a bit rough. The thought made her uneasy, but she forced herself to smile as she accepted a bouquet of flowers from the man. When he asked if she played golf, Seol-ah immediately imagined him hitting her with a golf club. Shaking off the thought, she realized that he was quite skilled at charming women. At that moment, Jin-woo suddenly burst out laughing. He told Seol-ah to read the card attached to the bouquet. When Seol-ah saw the name written on it, she was shocked to discover that the man sitting across from her was indeed a legitimate heir to a wealthy family. Jin-woo then revealed that he had come there specifically because he wanted to date Seol-ah. Stunned, Seol-ah couldn't believe that she was truly on the verge of marrying into a wealthy family. On her way home, she received another call from Jin-woo. He told her that from now on, she wouldn't need to work hard anymore. She just needed to love and rely on him. Jin-woo even promised to marry Seol-ah by the end of the year. Hearing this, Seol-ah was overjoyed. However, the moment she saw her younger sister, Chung-ah, Seol-ah finally had time to think. Chung-ah was the one who had killed Jin-woo's cousin. Seol-ah wondered to herself if she would have to abandon her dream of marrying into a wealthy family. On the other side, Hwa-young had already uncovered Seol-ah's background. She was adamant about not allowing Seol-ah into the family. To secure her place in the wealthy household, Seol-ah severed ties with her parents. Even after 9 years of marriage, Seol-ah refused to engage in physical intimacy with her husband. They slept in separate beds, and even having a child required in vitro fertilization. Despite her stomach being scarred with needle marks, Seol-ah didn't care. But Jin-woo remained as gentle as he was at the beginning. He would hug her and tell her he loved her hundreds of times a day. Yet every time, Seol-ah would only reply, "I know," never saying that she loved him back. Jin-woo, however, yearned for love to be mutual. He hoped that before he died, Seol-ah would tell him she loved him just once. Meanwhile, his mother, Hwa-young, had a very different attitude. Watching Seol-ah spend her son's money on shopping every day, she grew increasingly displeased. She even flaunted her lifestyle on Instagram, which Hwa-young couldn't tolerate. Hwa-young warned Seol-ah that while her son might be blinded by love, the family's money was off limits. She told Seol-ah to behave and be ready to leave at any moment. Seol-ah, long accustomed to her mother-in-law's threats, thought to herself that as long as she could find Jin-woo's weakness, she wouldn't have to worry about her position in the family. However, the next day, Hwa-young issued a new ultimatum. If Seol-ah couldn't bear a child within a year, she would ensure Jin-woo married a new daughter. daughter-in-law. Seeing Jin-woo rendered speechless by his mother's demand terrified Seol-ah. She quickly gave herself another injection in her abdomen, vowing to have a child to secure her status. Fortunately, the doctor delivered good news. This time the pregnancy was almost certain to succeed. Overjoyed, Seol-ah left the clinic, only to receive a call from the emergency room. Jin-woo had been injured in a car accident and required immediate surgery. Seol-ah needed to sign the consent forms. Without hesitation, Seol-ah rushed to the hospital and signed the papers. Seeing Jin-woo unconscious, his face covered in blood, she realized how deeply she loved him. Her mind was overwhelmed by memories of the sweet words Jin-woo said to her every day, words she had never reciprocated with an "I love you." Seol-ah deeply blamed herself, but just then, another injured person was wheeled into the room. Shortly after, the driver brought in 2 identical suitcases. Realizing something was amiss, Seol-ah used her husband's birthday to unlock one of the suitcases. Inside, she found women's clothing, confirming her suspicions. Her anger erupted, and she mistakenly vented her frustration on the secretary's brother, believing he was Jin-woo. However, when she learned that her mother-in-law, Hwa-young, was on her way to the hospital, Seol-ah quickly hid the suitcase. She then demanded the secretary's brother keep Jin-woo's affair a secret. After all, Hwa-young was already eager to replace her because she hadn't been able to bear a child in 9 years. Concerned for her son's safety, Hwa-young prayed fervently and even asked Seol-ah to join her. Unexpectedly, Seol-ah prayed for both Jin-woo and his mistress to die and never wake up again. At that moment, the driver brought Jin-woo's and his secretary's phones into the room. Fearing the affair might be exposed, Seol-ah reached out to take the phones, but her mother-in-law stopped her. Seol-ah struggled to conceal her inner panic and refused to reveal the phone's password to Hwa-young. After her mother-in-law left, Seol-ah frantically tried to unlock Secretary Tae-rang's phone, but failing to guess the correct password drove her to the brink of madness. She anxiously waited until she could enter the ICU to see Jin-woo. Seol-ah paid no attention to Jin-woo, who was still in a coma. Instead, she walked straight to Tae-rang's bedside to use her fingerprint to unlock the secretary's phone. One photo after another filled her with rage. Though she hadn't loved Jin-woo in their 9 years of marriage, Seol-ah couldn't tolerate anyone taking him away from her. In a fit of anger, she deleted every photo one by one. The doctor arrived with grim news, stating that Jin-woo might never regain consciousness and that the only option left was life-sustaining therapy. Hwa-young collapsed in shock, but Seol-ah remained unfazed. However, when a nurse asked her to buy diapers for Jin-woo, Seol-ah was taken aback. She thought bitterly that she would rather be a widow than care for a husband who had betrayed her. What Seol-ah didn't know was that Jin-woo had gone against his mother's wishes to marry her. Even when she deliberately created scandals to secure a marriage into his wealthy family, Jin-woo had ignored it all, only wanting to be with her. One day, while bringing food to the hospital, Seol-ah also bought a meal for herself. This seemingly trivial act drew Hwa-young's ire. The older woman snapped, asking if Seol-ah dared to eat food too. Before Seol-ah could respond, hot porridge splattered all over her. Seol-ah stood frozen, silently enduring the scalding pain. Seeing her lack of reaction, Hwa-young sneered even more, sarcastically urging Seol-ah to take photos of the VIP hospital room and post them online. "Isn't that what you usually do? Show off everything you have?" Hwa-young mocked. After that, Hwa-young ordered her to return to the hospital room and take care of Jin-woo. Seol-ah looked at the unconscious Jin-woo, then turned to glance at Tae-rang lying on the other side, growing even angrier. Though she had never loved Jin-woo in their 9 years of marriage, the idea of him loving someone else was unbearable to her. However, Hwa-young continued to make Seol-ah's life difficult. She taunted Seol-ah, suggesting that she was worried about something incriminating in Jin-woo's phone. Ignoring her mother-in-law, Seol-ah turned to leave, but Hwa-young stopped her and confiscated all her credit cards. Realizing her position in the family was now precarious and that Hwa-young would likely throw her out, Seol-ah, in a fit of rage, ripped off her diamond earrings and tossed them aside. But she quickly reconsidered. With Jin-woo unable to support her, she needed to secure something valuable. Seol-ah hurried into the wardrobe and grabbed as many luxury items as she could, hiding them under the bed. Suddenly, she remembered the diamond earrings she had discarded, knowing they were worth a fortune. Frantic, she rushed to retrieve them. At this point, Seol-ah no longer cared about Jin-woo's condition. Her sole focus was accumulating as much wealth as possible. To prevent Hwa-young from confirming the relationship between Jin-woo and Tae-rang, Seol-ah sneaked into Hwa-young's room and disabled Jin-woo's phone. Just as she finished, Hwa-young appeared behind her and grabbed her by the hair. Hwa-young confronted Seol-ah, demanding to know why she wasn't taking care of Jin-woo. Seol-ah lied, claiming that her mother-in-law's suspicions were making her feel uneasy. This quick-witted response allowed her to escape immediate trouble. However, Hwa-young continued to scold her, insisting she return to the hospital to tend to her son. Seol-ah knew that without Jin-woo, she had no standing in the family. Left with no choice, she obediently agreed and left. But upon arriving at the hospital, she was shocked to see her estranged younger sister, Chung-ah. Through this unexpected encounter, Seol-ah learned that the person injured alongside Jin-woo was a friend of Chung-ah's. The revelation brought back painful memories. 9 years ago, because Chung-ah was bullied to the point of having thoughts of leaving this world, this indirectly led to the death of Jin-woo's cousin. To protect her dream of marrying into a wealthy family, Seol-ah severed ties with her family and fabricated a story about being an orphan. Fearful that Jin-woo's aunt might discover the truth, Seol-ah panicked and hurriedly sent Chung-ah away. The estrangement between the two sisters was a calculated move by Seol-ah to secure her position in Jin-woo's family. As Seol-ah struggled to maintain her status, Hwa-young had already contacted a lawyer and prepared divorce papers to force Seol-ah out of the family. Meanwhile, Hwa-young received word that Jin-woo's condition had worsened. She tried repeatedly to call Seol-ah, but the phone went unanswered. In reality, Seol-ah had been looking for a place to catch up on sleep. While Hwa-young sat by Jin-woo's side, her anger toward Seol-ah only grew stronger. At the same time, Seol-ah woke up in a church. much. Realizing she was late, she hurriedly ran to the hospital. Hwa-young, however, wasn't about to let her off easily. When Seol-ah saw her mother-in-law, she immediately began explaining herself. Hwa-young, seizing the opportunity to humiliate Seol-ah further in front of Jinwoo's aunt, Yu-ra, made sure to teach her a lesson. Knowing she was in the wrong, Seol-ah repeatedly apologized. Unable to explain her absence after a sleepless night, she lied, claiming she had been at a sauna. Tae-rang, Hae-rang's brother, overheard the exchange and, disapproving of the drama, coughed loudly as he passed by. His interruption momentarily spared Seol-ah from further scolding, but Hwa-young warned that they would discuss the matter in depth later that evening. Seol-ah realized that without Jinwoo's protection, she had no place in the family. Determined to secure her future, she traded all her luxurious belongings for cash. After counting her money, she unexpectedly ran into her mother, whom she hadn't seen in 9 years. Shocked, Seol-ah confronted her, asking why she was there and telling her to stay away. Young A, tearfully pleading, said she only wanted to see her daughter again. Afraid of being discovered, Seol-ah quickly removed her sunglasses and hurriedly ushered her mother away. However, after sending her mother off, Seol-ah found herself unable to ignore the pain in her heart, so she ran after her mother and threw her a wad of cash. That evening, Seol-ah returned home, as requested by her mother-in-law, only to find the housekeeper preparing to throw away her wedding photos. It turned out Hwa-young had discovered that Seol-ah had sold the luxurious items Jinwoo had given her. Furious, Hwa-young pulled out the prenuptial agreement that Seol-ah had signed before their wedding. She was relieved that she had been cautious enough to prepare for such a situation. While she couldn't save Jinwoo, at least she could protect her son's wealth. Hwa-young told Seol-ah to proceed with the divorce. Seol-ah immediately dropped to her knees, apologizing profusely. She promised to return the watches and jewelry to their rightful places, but Hwa-young firmly warned her that divorce was the best option. Having worked so hard to marry into a wealthy family, Seol-ah couldn't bring herself to leave so easily. Furious, she stormed into Jinwoo's hospital room and demanded he wake up. Seol-ah cried bitterly, feeling heartbroken and unwilling to accept her fate. Meanwhile, Hwa-young found the quickest way to get rid of her. After confirming that the person photographed with Jinwoo was his secretary, Hae-rang, Hwa-young assumed her son had moved on and resolved to help him deal with Seol-ah. However, Seol-ah's expression didn't change when she saw the photo. Instead, she calmly stated that she would not divorce Jinwoo. Even though she had been betrayed by her husband, Seol-ah made it clear that she wasn't someone who acted without thought. After investigating, Seol-ah discovered that Jinwoo was the one responsible for the car accident, and she also learned that Hwa-young had framed Chung-ah's friend for the incident. Seol-ah used this evidence to threaten Hwa-young, warning that if she was kicked out, the news of Jinwoo causing the car accident while with his secretary would make headlines. Feeling triumphant, Seol-ah believed her position in the family was temporarily secure. However, when she went to Jinwoo's office to take photos, Seol-ah witnessed a tender moment between Jinwoo and Hae-rang. Overcome with anger, she yelled at Hae-rang. After calming down, she noticed the empty office and wasn't sure if her emotions were fueled by rage or jealousy. Later, Hwa-young called and urged her to upload photos. Holding her wedding picture, Seol-ah took a selfie with it, but suddenly, a sense of loss overwhelmed her. She looked at Jinwoo's face in the photo, and tears began to fall uncontrollably. This was the man who had spent so much money just to make her smile, the man who had confessed his love to her at any given moment over the past 9 years. Yet, why had he betrayed her like this? Why had he left her in such pain? What broke Seol-ah even more was the news that Hae-rang had unexpectedly regained consciousness. The first thing she asked after waking up was where Jinwoo was. Feigning concern for Seol-ah's exhaustion from staying at the hospital, Hwa-young suggested she return home to rest. She even told Seol-ah there was no need to rush to the hospital in the morning. But when Seol-ah returned to the hospital room again, she found Hae-rang sitting by Jinwoo's bedside, sobbing uncontrollably. It turned out that while Hwa-young had outwardly suggested Seol-ah go home and rest, her real intention was to have Hae-rang stay and take care of Jinwoo. Unable to contain her anger, Seol-ah wanted to slap Hae-rang. However, Hae-rang provocatively challenged her, asking if she dared to do so. She added smugly that it was Hwa-young who had instructed her to stay, and if Seol-ah had a problem, she should take it up with her mother-in-law. Seol-ah, furious, called Tae-rang, demanding he immediately come and take Hae-rang away. But before he could arrive, Hwa-young returned. Calmly but coldly, she claimed that she and Hae-rang were discussing business matters, and it was Seol-ah who should leave. Swallowing her anger and humiliation, Seol-ah left the room. As she walked through the lobby on the first floor, she ran into Chung-ah. It was then that Seol-ah learned the shocking truth. 9 years ago, the person who had bullied Chung-ah and the one who almost drove her to the point of leaving this world was none other than Hae-rang. Now, Hae-rang was not only being protected by Hwa-young, but had also managed to frame Chung-ah's friend as the one responsible for the accident. Out of concern for Seol-ah, Chung-ah showed her evidence and said she would seek reconciliation. Caught in a moral and emotional dilemma, Seol-ah hesitated, but ultimately decided to bring Chung-ah to Jinwoo's hospital room. When they arrived, they found that Hae-rang had already moved into the room herself. Chung-ah presented evidence in an attempt to seek reconciliation, but Hwa-young skillfully shifted the burden onto Seol-ah. She posed a cunning question: whether the narrative of a vice chairman driving a sports car and hitting a civil service applicant, or a civil service applicant driving out of exhaustion causing severe injury to the vice chairman, would be more reasonable. Which story would cause less damage to the corporation? Leaving the decision to Seol-ah, Hwa-young then turned her attention to criticizing Chung-ah. She accused her of causing the death of her nephew 9 years ago, and now trying to ruin her sister's life as well. With just a few sharp words, Hwa-young managed to manipulate Chung-ah into deleting the evidence. Seol-ah sat by Jinwoo's bedside, watching over him as he lay unconscious. Her thoughts wandered back to Hae-rang's words that Jinwoo had done everything in his power for her. Yet in the 9 years they had been married, she had never truly felt it or done anything meaningful for him. For the first time, Seol-ah resolved to make a sacrifice for Jin-woo, hoping to discuss their marriage once he woke up. However, Hwa-young remained skeptical, believing that Seol-ah's reluctance to leave was solely motivated by her desire to inherit Jin-woo's wealth. But when reporters appeared outside the hospital room, Hwa-young's demeanor changed immediately. Unexpectedly, the reporters seemed to know everything. Their pointed questions infuriated her, but thankfully, Seol intervened just in time to defuse the situation. After Seol-ah left, Hwa-young went to find Tae-rang. She offered Tae-rang the opportunity to stay by Jin-woo's bedside, waiting until Seol-ah left on her own. At that point, Tae-rang could take Seol-ah's place as the daughter-in-law. Naturally, Tae-rang eagerly agreed. Outside the hospital room, Seol-ah's mother, Chung-ah, witnessed the scene and could no longer hold back her anger. She stormed into the room and slapped Tae-rang across the face. Chung-ah accused Tae-rang of not only bullying Chung-ah years ago, but now scheming against Seol-ah to marry into a wealthy family. Hwa-young, incensed by Chung-ah's tone, retorted that she was a poor woman with no self-respect. She challenged her to take Seol-ah away if she had the capability. With a smug wave, Hwa-young dismissed Chung-ah as if she had already won. Despite everything, Seol-ah insisted on returning to Jin-woo's room, saying she had never treated him well before. And now, while he was still unconscious, she couldn't simply leave him. That evening, when Seol-ah returned home, Hwa-young directly presented the divorce settlement papers. She told Seol-ah that signing them now would still allow her to receive a small amount of alimony. Seol-ah refused to accept the divorce, especially under such coercive circumstances. Her defiance only angered Hwa-young further, who threatened to use her power to expose Seol-ah's connection with Tae-rang. She warned that not only Seol-ah, but also her entire family would suffer the consequences if she didn't comply. Seol-ah had no choice but to agree to the divorce. However, she had one condition. Before Jin-woo regained consciousness, she wanted to visit him to say goodbye in person. Seeing Seol-ah's sincerity, Hwa-young reluctantly agreed. The dream of a wealthy family had finally shattered. Time flew by, and a year quickly passed. Jin-woo finally woke up in his hospital bed, and the first thing he searched for was Seol-ah. Hwa-young rushed to hold her son's hand, overwhelmed with emotion to the point of tears. Jin-woo tried his best but could only utter one sentence. "Where is Seol-ah?" A lot had happened over the past year. Seol-ah had returned to a simple, ordinary life. To support her family, she took a job as a morning show host at 4 a.m. She no longer wore designer clothes or high-end shoes. The smile that had long disappeared now reappeared on her face, radiating a natural charm that made Tae-rang even more captivated by her. Seol-ah returned to her small home in the early hours of the morning. Though her body was tired, her heart felt at peace. This was a happiness she could never find in a mansion. Chung-ah, feeling sorry for her daughter's exhaustion, still regularly visited Jin-woo every Wednesday. How could one start a new life like this? Seol-ah didn't want to stop. Even though she was constantly insulted by Tae-rang every time she visited the hospital, she remained determined to endure until Jin-woo woke up so she could say her final goodbye. On the other hand, when Jin-woo asked about Seol-ah's whereabouts, Hwa-young lied, claiming that Seol-ah had moved back to her parents' house because she was feeling exhausted. Jin-woo couldn't accept the fact that, after 9 years of loving Seol-ah wholeheartedly, he was left with such a painful outcome. He wanted to meet her immediately to talk, but Seol-ah, exhausted from work, was catching up on sleep and missed Jin-woo's call. Jin-woo then asked his mother to call Seol-ah using his phone, but Hwa-young insisted that he didn't have a phone with him. After a year, Seol-ah had finally waited for the day Jin-woo woke up. Compared to the pain he caused her, she felt even more moved that she could say her goodbye. However, Jin-woo, swayed by his mother, believed that Seol-ah treated him as if he were dead and abandoned him. Unable to forgive her, he harbored resentment. When Seol-ah heard this, she was furious. Clearly, she was the one who deserved an apology from Jin-woo. Yet, Seol-ah chose not to bring up Jin-woo and Tae-rang's past. After all, they had missed their chance and lost control of their fates. Instead of dwelling on the past, it was better for them to give each other separate lives. Seol-ah said that she wouldn't visit again in the future. It was clear that both she and Jin-woo wanted each other to live well, but misunderstandings ultimately caused them both pain. Meanwhile, at home, Hwa-young was secretly delighted. Now that Jin-woo had woken up, she even thanked Tae-rang for taking care of him over the past year and promised to give her the position she desired. However, Seol-ah's father felt indignant about the divorce settlement of 10 billion won, deeming it unnecessary. Chung-ah understood that the money was not financial support but an insult. Even if it were 100 billion won, she wouldn't accept it. Seol-ah told her mother that Jin-woo had woken up. She consoled herself that the guilt she had carried for so long had finally been resolved. From now on, she would no longer visit the hospital and would pursue her ideal life. On the other side, after discovering there was more to the divorce than he initially knew, Jin-woo frantically called Seol-ah, 399 missed calls in total. Left with no other choice, Seol-ah turned off her phone. She hesitated about whether to meet Jin-woo, but was encouraged by Tae-rang, who reminded her that she still owed Jin-woo a proper goodbye. However, when Seol-ah opened the door to Jin-woo's hospital room, she saw Tae-rang helping him change clothes. Tae-rang's expression was full of provocation, adding fuel to Seol-ah's turmoil. Seol-ah did her best to hide her pain as she approached Jin-woo. She told him they were already divorced. Having been in a coma for a year, Jin-woo couldn't believe it. Even when Seol-ah explained that his mother had forced her to do so, Jin-woo, overwhelmed by anger, lost his composure. He mocked her, accusing her of abandoning him for a mere divorce settlement. Seol-ah had originally come to bid him a final farewell, but now, she didn't feel the need to explain anymore. Instead, she asked Jin-woo one last question. What had really happened on the day of the car accident between him and Tae-rang? She had been longing for this answer since the day he went into a coma. However, as Seol-ah stepped out of the room, Tae-rang confronted her with arrogance, demanding that she stay away. Seol-ah noticed the insecurity in Tae-rang's demeanor demeanor. With a calm yet firm tone, she said she would be watching closely to see what Tae-rang did next, warning her not to get too complacent. After learning about this, Hwa-young immediately went to Jin-woo's side. She quickly explained the divorce, urging him not to dwell on it. She claimed that if she hadn't acted, the family's assets would have ended up with Seol-ah. However, Jin-woo retorted that Seol-ah was the woman he loved. He couldn't accept a life without her. Determined to reconcile, Jin-woo tasked his assistant with investigating Seol-ah's job and home address. Jin-woo stayed up until 4 a.m. to listen to Seol-ah's show. As soon as morning came, he sent a series of luxurious gifts to her house, items she used to love. He then sat in his room, anxiously waiting for a message from her. Finally, Seol-ah called, but not to thank him. She called to scold him. Seeing the gifts returned intact, Jin-woo couldn't figure out what he had done wrong. From beginning to end, he had never truly been loved by Seol-ah, but he still wanted to start over with her. At that moment, Chung-ah arrived. She confronted Jin-woo, accusing him of marrying her daughter only to cruelly cast her aside. She reminded him that Seol-ah left their home without taking any alimony. Witnessing both her husband and his secretary hospitalized together had been a devastating blow for Seol-ah. Having to see them lying in their hospital beds every day had made her life unbearable. Chung-ah begged Jin-woo to stop contacting Seol-ah. Overcome with guilt after learning the truth, Jin-woo tried to stand up to apologize, but collapsed to the ground due to his weakened legs. Chung-ah rushed to help him, only for Hwa-young to misunderstand the situation. Jin-woo felt like he was losing his mind, caught between his mother and Seol-ah. But to win Seol-ah back, he had to make a harsh decision. He pushed his mother's hand away and demanded that she apologize to Chung-ah. Once Jin-woo recovered and was discharged from the hospital, he prepared to pursue Seol-ah again. Jin-woo realized that there was now another man by Seol-ah's side. The two of them were chatting and laughing as if they were very close, and this sight broke Jin-woo's heart. However, he couldn't resist following them. In their 9 years together, he had never seen Seol-ah laugh so happily. Unable to bear it, Jin-woo interrupted their conversation. He demanded to know who the man was. Tae-rang calmly introduced himself as Seol-ah's friend. Embarrassed, Seol-ah walked away alone. Jin-woo quickly ran after her, asking where the Seol-ah he once knew had gone. Without understanding her reasons, Jin-woo stormed home in frustration. Yet the image of Seol-ah and Tae-rang laughing together lingered in his mind, leaving him feeling lost about how to win her back. Initially, Jin-woo's mistakes had stemmed from exhaustion, but now he was certain of his feelings. Determined, he firmly rejected Tae-rang's advances. But Tae-rang wasn't one to give up easily. She began manipulating Hwa-young, urging her to take action against Seol-ah while feigning concern for the older woman's emotions. Hwa-young, always proud and domineering, felt comforted by Tae-rang's attentiveness. She looked at her chosen daughter-in-law with satisfaction. Meanwhile, Jin-woo fully recovered and returned to work at the company. By chance, he encountered Tae-rang in the lobby on the first floor. Jin-woo approached Tae-rang with a mocking tone, questioning how someone who claimed to be Seol-ah's friend could also happen to work in the same building. To his surprise, Tae-rang revealed that he was Tae-rang's brother. This revelation left Jin-woo stunned. His curiosity piqued. Jin-woo confronted Tae-rang to learn more, but what infuriated him was discovering that Tae-rang had known about his relationship with Tae-rang all along. This realization made Jin-woo even more aware of the complexity of his ties with Tae-rang. Adding to his unease, he learned that Tae-rang had met Seol-ah back when she was still visiting the hospital. Fueled by jealousy, Jin-woo, a wealthy heir acting out of love, went straight to Tae-rang's restaurant and boldly declared that Seol-ah was his wife. Jin-woo couldn't accept the reality of their divorce, nor could he tolerate other men being close to Seol-ah. In his frustration, he drove to Seol-ah's workplace, only to find that Tae-rang had already been waiting there for a long time. Although Jin-woo felt deep guilt towards Seol-ah, he was still desperate to salvage their marriage. Seol-ah, still angry over what had transpired between Jin-woo and Tae-rang, couldn't help but notice how thinly dressed Jin-woo was. Concerned, she asked why he wasn't wearing enough. It was then that Jin-woo realized, in his rush, he had forgotten his coat. Seizing the opportunity, he devised a plan. Pretending to have caught a cold, feigning illness, Jin-woo not only managed to borrow Seol-ah's scarf, but also acted pitiful enough to convince her to sit in his car for warmth. After succeeding, Jin-woo intentionally glanced at Tae-rang with a provocative look. It was then that Seol-ah noticed Tae-rang sitting in the car across from them. Watching him leave in solitude, Seol-ah felt a pang of sadness. Her emotions deepened when she saw the scarf Jin-woo was wearing. Only then did she understand why Tae-rang had been upset. That scarf was the one he had given her earlier. Jin-woo drove Seol-ah to the beach, and along the way, he kept telling her not to befriend other men, especially Tae-rang. Unconvinced, Seol-ah retorted that she had observed Tae-rang for an entire year. It was Tae-rang who apologized to her on Tae-rang's behalf, endured the anger that Jin-woo deserved, and stayed by her side when no one else did. A crude person like Seol-ah had transformed into who she was today, thanks to Tae-rang. Jin-woo realized that Seol-ah didn't see Tae-rang merely as a friend. It was something Jin-woo himself had yearned for, but never achieved. He could sense the unique bond between the two of them. Meanwhile, Tae-rang spent the entire night waiting for news but received none. Finally, he picked up the phone to call Seol-ah, only to have Jin-woo answer instead. Misunderstanding the situation, Tae-rang laughed bitterly at his own foolishness. The next morning, Tae-rang found her brother lying on the couch in the living room and asked if something was wrong with him. But Tae-rang instead asked his sister what kind of person Jin-woo was. Tae-rang noticed an uncanny similarity between the two men. They both shared the pain of unrequited love. Though the siblings didn't say much more, they silently understood each other's struggles. Meanwhile, Jin-woo was driving Seol-ah home. At an intersection, she noticed Chung-ah nearby and quickly covered her face. When Seol-ah accidentally dropped her phone, Jin-woo called her back to retrieve it. However, just as she returned to grab it, Chung-ah turned around. Not wanting her mother to see her in this situation and worry, Seol-ah hurriedly stopped her. But now the question was how to return the phone. Sliding it through the gate's crack wasn't feasible. and leaving it in the mailbox seemed risky. Just as Jinwoo was contemplating walking to the house, he ran into Seol-ah's father, Young-woo. Jinwoo bowed deeply, apologizing for the late introduction, even though it had been 10 years since he became the son-in-law. Fortunately, Young-woo wasn't too concerned about formalities. As soon as Jinwoo stepped inside, he knelt to show his respect. After earning Young-woo's approval, he requested to see Seol-ah's room. Seeing the cramped space, Jinwoo's heart ached, and he felt an overwhelming urge to bring her back to the mansion immediately. To win Seol-ah's heart, he realized he first had to win over Chung-ah. Jinwoo promised to make amends and become a good brother-in-law. He also made his final decision about heir, choosing to end things once and for all. Jinwoo even set aside his pride as the company president to sincerely apologize to Chung-ah's friend. For causing the car accident, Jinwoo sincerely apologized, making it clear he was doing everything for Seol-ah. Heir, seeing this, realized that relying on her own efforts wouldn't be enough to keep him. Frustrated, she went to Hwyum to complain, insisting that Seol-ah would never take Jinwoo back. On her way home, Heir accidentally witnessed her brother confessing his feelings to Seol-ah. Shocked and hurt, she wondered why the two most important men in her life were both in love with the same woman. Furious, Heir sought out Seol-ah to declare war. She demanded that Seol-ah stay away from her brother, but Seol-ah retorted, questioning Heir's shamelessness in making such a demand. Heir then accused Seol-ah of being selfish and incapable of understanding love, claiming that was why her relationship with Jinwoo ended. Seol-ah, undeterred, asked Tae-rang if her anger stemmed from the fact that both Jinwoo and Tae-rang had feelings for her. Seol-ah told Tae-rang she would soon experience what it felt like to love someone who was unattainable. Meanwhile, Jinwoo ignored his mother's objections and remained resolute in winning back Seol-ah. He drove the luxurious car he had bought for Seol-ah to her father's house. Jinwoo knelt before the door and apologized. Seeing this, Young-woo was touched and invited Jinwoo inside for a meal. When he learned that Jinwoo's purpose was to give Seol-ah a luxury car, Young-woo couldn't help but smile broadly. Jinwoo repeatedly emphasized addressing Young-woo as his father-in-law, which made Young-woo extremely pleased. After a few glasses of soju, Jinwoo performed 3 respectful bows to Young-woo, promising to be filial. He even bowed to Chung-ah, assuring her he would prove himself worthy. That evening, when Young-ae returned home, she found Jinwoo and her husband snoring in the living room. Shocked and angry, she couldn't believe that her former son-in-law, who had hurt Seol-ah, dared to come back. Furious, she poured a bucket of water over Jinwoo's head. However, Jinwoo merely sat up, shook the water off, and lay back down to sleep, leaving Young-ae utterly exasperated. Although she wanted to kick Jinwoo out, seeing him in such a pitiful state softened her anger, and she eventually gave up on driving him away. When Seol-ah arrived home and saw Jinwoo lying there, she screamed in frustration. Yet despite her anger, she couldn't resist covering him with a blanket. Seol-ah then found herself reminiscing about the moment Tae-rang held her hand, her heart racing at the thought. Curious about her own feelings, she took Jinwoo's hand and closed her eyes to see how her heart would react. To her surprise, Jinwoo woke up and witnessed the entire scene. Pretending to still be asleep, he smiled secretly and happily. Later that night, Jinwoo tenderly covered Seol-ah with a blanket and embraced her from behind, cherishing the moment and silently hoping to win her love back. However, when he closed his eyes to savor the moment, Seol-ah suddenly realized what was happening and kicked him off the couch. The harsh rejection stung Jinwoo deeply, but his determination remained unwavering. He refused to heed his mother's disapproval, resolutely continuing his pursuit of Seol-ah. Hwyum believed that a woman like Seol-ah, who she thought was only after money, didn't deserve Jinwoo. However, Jinwoo made it clear that he didn't care. But the moment he saw the photos of Seol-ah with someone else, jealousy consumed him. Enraged, he tore the pictures to shreds. While Jinwoo was drinking to drown his sorrows, Seol-ah called him. She firmly expressed her intention to return the car and stated she didn't want to repeat the mistakes of the past. Jinwoo, feeling hurt and suspicious, asked her if Tae-rang was the reason she had changed so much. Seol-ah didn't answer. Instead, she hung up immediately, leaving Jinwoo seething with anger. Determined to confront her, Jinwoo set out to find Seol-ah. But when he stumbled upon her and Tae-rang sharing a heartfelt confession with each other, he froze. Overwhelmed by sadness, Jinwoo turned and walked away. Hearing Seol-ah speak such touching words to someone else made him furious and unable to contain his emotions. As he recalled her promise to never change, Jinwoo felt an unbearable wave of pain and collapsed to the ground in despair. Despite his suffering, Jinwoo couldn't give up on Seol-ah. His love for her was so deep that he was willing to cast aside his pride. Resolute, he went straight to where Seol-ah and Tae-rang were, determined to intervene. No matter what Seol-ah did, Jinwoo followed her everywhere. However, when Seol-ah continuously praised Tae-rang for the late-night meal he had prepared, Jinwoo couldn't hold back any longer. Frustrated and heartbroken, he asked her directly, "Is this really what you want?" Seol-ah found Jinwoo's behavior unreasonable and decided to leave the two men behind. Jinwoo, desperate to salvage their marriage, gifted Seol-ah a luxury car, but the car keys were returned the very next day. Determined not to give up, Jinwoo invited Seol-ah's father, Young-woo, to his company to earn his trust. Ignoring his pride, Jinwoo personally welcomed Young-woo and even took him and Chung-ah to a high-end Japanese restaurant, introducing them to dishes they had never tasted before. The evening ended on a cheerful note as Jinwoo drove them back home. However, his joy was short-lived when he saw Seol-ah and Tae-rang on a happy date. The sight crushed Jinwoo's spirits. The next day, Jinwoo couldn't even bring himself to eat. Instead, he transferred a staggering 1 billion won into Seol-ah's account as pocket money. He even humbled himself to beg Tae-rang for some time, hoping for a chance to confront the reality of their failed marriage and possibly mend it. However, Seol-ah was no longer the money-driven person she used to be. She reprimanded Jinwoo for his shallow habit of using money to solve everything. Her sharp words cut through his heart as she demanded he stop insulting her with his wealth. As she stormed off in anger, Jinwoo called her back. back. He reminded her that when they divorced, she had refused the 10 billion won in alimony he had offered. With sincerity in his voice, Jin-woo said, "Even if we're divorced, I won't hate you for it." From now on, whether it was Seol-ah or her family, Jin-woo declared he would provide financial support for them. Hearing this only made Seol-ah angrier. She accused Jin-woo of always treating her family as if they didn't exist. During their 9 years of marriage, she had waited for him to bring up visiting her parents, but that moment never came, even until their divorce. Jin-woo apologized once more for his indifference, but Seol-ah saw it as more than just neglect. To her, it was outright disdain for her and her family. With pain in her voice, she admitted how lonely she had felt, especially during their wedding, when thoughts of her parents amplified her solitude. Despite their heated argument, this was the first time Jin-woo and Seol-ah had such an open conversation in their entire 9 years together. She revealed that, at the beginning of their marriage, Hwa-young had demanded that she sever all ties with her family as a condition to marry Jin-woo. Later, Hwa-young kicked her out without granting her any rights. Now, Jin-woo was resolute in defying his mother's control. He immediately fired heir and sent her back to her mother, unaware that the two women were conspiring together to permanently remove Seol-ah from his life. One evening, when Jin-woo returned home from work, he discovered that his mother had summoned Seol-ah to their house and was threatening her. The reason? To uncover why Seol-ah had refused the 10 billion won in alimony after their divorce. Because of the 9 years spent together as a married couple with Jin-woo, the resentment that Jin-woo once had for Seol-ah was now replaced with feelings of guilt. It turned out that in the end, Jin-woo only loved Seol-ah in his own way. For the first time in 10 years, Jin-woo understood Seol-ah's feelings. He begged for her forgiveness. After resolving their conflict, Seol-ah also broke down in tears, but before they could do anything further, Hwa-young spoke up. She said she felt humiliated to have a daughter-in-law like Seol-ah. At that moment, Seol-ah was harshly brought back to reality. She pleaded with Hwa-young to take good care of her son and asked her to personally ensure that Jin-woo would disappear from her life. Originally, it was the mother-in-law's cruelty toward her that had caused Seol-ah's pain, but now, she would leave it to Hwa-young to handle. While Seol-ah felt a little moved by Jin-woo, she no longer wanted to be a part of this wealthy family. Jin-woo immediately chased after Seol-ah. Life was short, and he wanted to live with the one he loved. Finally, Jin-woo gathered the courage to confess the truth about his affair with Tae-rang before the accident happened. He admitted that for the 9 years, Seol-ah had always been cold toward him. Although he knew she married him for money, he had hoped that Seol-ah would come to love him. Even though Jin-woo's pride was wounded, Seol-ah still did not love him, and the concern Tae-rang showed toward him at that time was simply comfort. Jin-woo had no genuine feelings for anyone else. He continued to apologize, hoping they could salvage their marriage. However, Seol-ah did not want to return to him just to heal the wounds that had already been inflicted. For the rest of her life, she just wanted to live independently. Later, Jin-woo realized that it was his mother who had caused the distance between them. He made it clear to his mother that he would officially pursue Seol-ah from now on. Meanwhile, when Seol-ah went for an interview for an MC position, she was mocked for being the daughter-in-law of a wealthy family, yet still seeking employment. The interviewer immediately rejected Seol-ah when they found out she was Jin-woo's ex-wife, fearing that Jin-woo would not invest in the advertising. Whenever Seol-ah felt discouraged, Tae-rang was there to comfort her with his gentle nature and support. Seol-ah quickly regained her fighting spirit and returned to work. She was fortunate enough to get an opportunity to substitute as a program host. Tae-rang worried that after 9 years without being in front of the camera, Seol-ah might feel tense. So, he went straight to the recording studio to cheer her on. When Jin-woo saw Seol-ah return to being a program host, he immediately bought her many expensive dresses as gifts. Seol-ah, however, shouted at him to leave her alone. Jin-woo was shocked to see that Seol-ah still had such an adorable side, but he was then warned not to insert advertisements into her program. If that caused Seol-ah to lose her job, she would distance herself from him for good. Afterward, Jin-woo watched Seol-ah walk away angrily, and he couldn't help but laugh out loud. When Seol-ah took a taxi home, Jin-woo appeared in the front seat to surprise her. Seol-ah was very surprised, but she treated him like heir. She took out her phone to call Tae-rang and arranged to meet him. Hearing Seol-ah speak kindly to another man made Jin-woo extremely jealous. He deliberately spoke louder so that Tae-rang could hear. Tae-rang immediately felt very disappointed. He thought about the opposition from his father, the time he had spent with Seol-ah, and the anxiety he felt about being discovered by their families, especially with Jin-woo constantly causing problems. All these things made Tae-rang feel frustrated. However, after Seol arrived, she kept talking about Jin-woo, and in the end, Tae-rang made a decision. He told Seol-ah that the two of them should take a break and give each other some time apart. Seol-ah blocked Tae-rang's car to ask why he wanted to break up. Tae-rang remained silent and simply tied the scarf around her, but his eyes were filled with pain. At that moment, Jin-woo was standing nearby, watching them. Tae-rang and Seol-ah went to a restaurant. Tae-rang admitted that he knew heir was the one responsible for causing Seol-ah's sister to consider leaving this world. He felt unworthy to be with Seol-ah because Seol-ah had once abandoned his family for Jin-woo, and now Seol-ah had no choice in this relationship. Meanwhile, Jin-woo was anxiously waiting. When he saw Seol-ah, he immediately rushed to greet her. Seeing him, Seol-ah cried even harder. Jin-woo, though angry at first, slowly shifted to feeling heartbroken. Even though he didn't know what had happened between the two of them, all he wanted was to comfort Seol-ah, who was in sorrow. Once again, Jin-woo asked Seol-ah to give him a chance. Even if she pretended to love him, it wouldn't matter. He would make up for everything he had failed to do for her. Jin-woo was willing to go to Seol-ah's house early in the morning in freezing weather just to scatter sand on the ground so she wouldn't slip. He was ready to be there for her at any time. Jin-woo even had no problem going with Seol-ah to a noisy roadside stall, eating cheap chicken feet with her. Young-woong praised Jin-woo's persistence parents, so he enthusiastically arranged for the two of them to remarry. However, one day when he visited Jin-woo's office, he found that Jin-woo was not there. It was then that he heard about Jin-woo and Tae-rang from Hwa-young. Young-woo, furious, slapped Jin-woo, which put a halt to his pursuit of Seol-ah. Every day, Jin-woo had to drink heavily to sleep, but he still woke up at 4 a.m. to listen to Seol-ah's radio show without fail. This time, as a listener, Jin-woo sent in a message asking what he should do if his wife was heartbroken. Seol-ah, not knowing it was Jin-woo, gave her advice. She asked if he still loved his wife. If so, he should be patient and wait until his wife accepted him. Jin-woo used a cheap ring-shaped candy to exchange for another month of dating with Seol-ah. He jokingly promised that next time, he would give her a diamond ring as big as that one. Seol-ah laughed at his remark, and Jin-woo was happy about it. He even danced when he got home, but accidentally got caught by Hwa-young. She asked him what he was doing going to Seol-ah's house every day. Jin-woo bluntly replied that he wanted to date Seol-ah. He told her that if she opposed it again, he would move out of the house. Jin-woo urged his mother to accept the reality. However, Tae-rang went to tell Hwa-young that Jin-woo had bought a diamond ring worth 48,000 won and publicly announced that he was getting back together with Seol-ah. Tae-rang assumed that Seol-ah must have agreed to restart the relationship because of such expensive things. Hwa-young concluded that Seol-ah was still obsessed with her son's money. She then encouraged Tae-rang to speed up the process and keep Jin-woo while she would take care of Seol-ah. Hwa-young went to Seol-ah and directly asked about the ring. Seol-ah was speechless. She didn't know how Hwa-young found out about the candy ring, but she still took it out to show her. Hwa-young, looking surprised, wondered how something like this could be worth 48,000 won. She assumed that Seol-ah had hidden the real one and even threatened to barge into her house to look for it. With no other choice, Seol-ah went with Hwa-young to Jin-woo's house to clear things up. As soon as they entered, Jin-woo's eyes were fixed on Seol-ah, while Hwa-young continued talking non-stop. But Jin-woo didn't care. He pushed his mother aside and walked over to Seol-ah, asking her if his mother had been bullying her or if he had done something wrong. It wasn't until Seol-ah took out the ring and asked Jin-woo if he had another one to give her that he realized what had happened. He then turned to look at his mother and calmly told her to stay calm. Then, Jin-woo took out the ring he actually wanted to give Seol-ah. Hwa-young was extremely surprised. She scolded the couple for daring to display their sweet gestures in front of her, accusing Seol of pretending not to know but secretly wanting to exchange the candy ring for a real diamond ring. Even though they were divorced, Seol couldn't accept being bullied, so to make Hwa-young angry, Seol deliberately invited Jin-woo to a romantic dinner at a restaurant. Jin-woo was surprised but happily agreed, completely ignoring his mother's objections. He quickly ran upstairs to change, leaving the two women in conflict. The two of them went to the restaurant where they had their first date 10 years ago. Jin-woo couldn't help but confess his feelings again, saying that he felt even more moved by Seol-ah now than he did 10 years ago. It was probably because he had lost her, so he still felt a bit tense. He then proposed meeting her father, saying that even if he had to be slapped again, he was willing to buy the TV station for Seol-ah so she could focus on being a presenter. Seol-ah, wanting to rely on her own abilities, agreed to date him for this month, but insisted that neither of their parents should interfere. That night, Jin-woo followed Seol-ah back to her house to beg for her parents' forgiveness. Even though Young-woong tried to chase Jin-woo away with a stick, Jin-woo still climbed into the house at midnight. He told his in-laws that he was back again, kneeling firmly on the floor, determined to beg for Seol-ah's hand, even if it meant dying by her father's hand. He just asked them to give Seol-ah back to him. Young-woo, furious, swung the stick, but Seol-ah immediately stepped in front to protect him. This scene made Jin-woo feel satisfied because as long as Seol-ah stood by him, he would endure anything, even kneeling for hours if needed. However, Hwa-young refused and scolded Seol-ah harshly, asking how much money it would take to get her to give up on Jin-woo. Young-ai could no longer tolerate Hwa-young's arrogance and decided that if Hwa-young was going to oppose them, she would be the one to support the couple. Hearing this, Jin-woo immediately bowed in gratitude. But Tae-rang, not wanting them to date, came up with a wicked plan. On the other hand, Hwa-young told Jin-woo that if he insisted on being with Seol-ah, she would call for an extraordinary shareholders meeting, and Jin-woo would be removed from his position as vice president. Jin-woo, thinking his mother was joking, casually took Seol-ah to a restaurant and even went into the kitchen to cook for her. However, Seol-ah waited for 3 hours and still had not received a single dish. Seol-ah, curious, went down to the kitchen to ask Jin-woo why it was taking so long. Jin-woo told her to be patient for a little longer. Seol-ah doubted whether they would even get to eat by evening. Jin-woo cheerfully approached and teased her, and Seol-ah, with no other choice, had to escape from the kitchen. The image of Tae-rang cooking for her came to mind. By then, Jin-woo had finished preparing the meal and purposely smeared some sauce on his face. Seol-ah, seeing his efforts, wiped it off for him. However, the food was far from commendable. The seafood was so full of sand that Seol-ah almost threw up, but she didn't want to discard the expensive ingredients. Inadvertently, she mentioned that Tae-rang would know how to save the dish, which deeply hurt Jin-woo. Though upset, he still suggested taking Seol-ah to a top hotel, but she reprimanded him for wasting food and acting recklessly. Seol-ah had always only bought the best, most expensive things when shopping and had eaten the finest meals. Thinking about the changes in Seol-ah because of Tae-rang, Jin-woo left in anger. However, the next day, Hwa-young handed him a termination letter. Meanwhile, Tae-rang, living in Jin-woo's house, not only slept in his bed but also used Seol-ah's vanity. She thought that by doing so, she could slowly win Jin-woo over. Unexpectedly, Jin-woo discovered that Tae-rang had moved in. Immediately, he packed his things and left. When Hwa-young saw her plan fail, she rushed to stop him, even threatening to fire him from his position as vice president. But Jin-woo was completely unfazed. Soon after, he showed up at Seol-ah's house, begging her to let him stay for a day. Though it was the first time in his life that Jin-woo slept on a sofa. He was happy just to share a roof with Seol-ah. He praised the meal his mother-in-law cooked, even cheerfully eating large bites despite being allergic to ferns. But despite Jin-woo's best efforts to please her parents, Seol-ah decided to send him away. However, when she brought his luggage back home, she found Tae-rang there. Tae-rang arrogantly ordered the housekeeper to see the guest out, as if she were the mistress of the house. Furious, Seol-ah went into the bedroom and saw Tae-rang using her things. She immediately went to the dressing room to confront her, but Tae-rang defiantly said that Hwa-young liked her and wanted her to be the daughter-in-law. After all, she and Jin-woo had been together for 2 years. Seol-ah, seething with anger, responded that if Tae-rang wanted to sleep in her bed she could, but she would never give Jin-woo to a scheming person like her. Seol-ah angrily grabbed Jin-woo's clothes and tossed them into the closet. Afterward, she picked up his suitcase and headed back to her place. Despite Hwa-young's pressure, Seol-ah remained firm in her decision, telling her that she would only leave if Tae-rang was kicked out of the house. But Hwa-young refused. Seol-ah was about to bring up how Tae-rang was responsible for causing the death of Hwa-young's grandson and nearly causing harm to her own sister when Tae-rang intervened. Tae-rang accused Seol-ah of marrying Jin-woo for money. While Seol-ah had always been concerned about Jin-woo's career, she was resolute in leaving with his suitcase. To her surprise, Hwa-young grabbed her by the hair, and during the struggle Seol-ah accidentally pushed Hwa-young down. Just then, Jin-woo returned, but his first concern was whether Seol-ah was hurt. Hwa-young, furious that her son didn't care for her, was more upset by his indifference than her fault. Jin-woo, bewildered by his mother's actions, angrily asked her why she was attacking Seol-ah. Thankfully, Seol-ah convinced Jin-woo to take the suitcase and go back to her house. Once there, Jin-woo went out of his way to help Seol-ah's mother by picking garlic. The garlic was so pungent that it made him cry uncontrollably. He even wore slippers while going outside to take out the trash, showing everyone that he had learned to sort waste properly. Jin-woo went to a cheap salon to get a haircut and wash his hair, hoping to please Young-woo. He planned to stay at Seol-ah's house, waiting for her to accept him, but he unexpectedly found out that Tae-rang was the one who nearly drove Chung-ah to leave this world. Jin-woo went to Tae-rang to have an honest conversation, and after resolving all the conflicts, he decided to give up on pursuing Seol-ah. Before leaving, he bought some soju and happily drank with Young-woo one last time. He also knelt before Young-ae, apologizing for hurting Seol-ah and Chung-ah. He promised that he would quietly leave the next day. Jin-woo sat in silence from late at night until dawn. Early in the morning, he expressed his feelings to Seol-ah, saying that being able to see her face every day was the happiest thing for him, but he couldn't bear to watch her leave. This was the last time Jin-woo would step into Seol-ah's room, feeling the atmosphere of her life. He truly wanted to leave without anyone around him. Not wanting to go home, Jin-woo decided to stay at the office and sent a farewell gift to Seol-ah's house. As he stared at the delicious lunch in front of him, Jin-woo's mind was filled with the image of having meals with Seol-ah's family. Although Seol-ah came to the office, it seemed like they were officially saying goodbye. Seol-ah thanked Jin-woo for always loving her, feeling honored by his affection, but also guilty for not being able to reciprocate. She gently rejected his offer to date, explaining that she was leaving. The tears in Seol-ah's eyes were filled with love and the pain of parting from Jin-woo. After their breakup, Jin-woo secretly visited the television station just to watch Seol-ah from afar. However, when he saw her with Tae-rang, his heart sank, and he returned home, peeling garlic, crying endlessly. His routine of peeling garlic every other day finally drove Hwa-young to her breaking point. She yelled, demanding to know why he only had Seol-ah in his heart and not his mother. In his sadness, Jin-woo had no choice but to speak with Tae-rang. After drinking heavily and falling asleep, Tae-rang revealed the truth. Seol-ah always talked about Jin-woo, reminiscing about him every day. Tae-rang now realized that Jin-woo had been the only one unaware of Seol-ah's feelings. He then turned to drink more and called Seol-ah over, telling her that Jin-woo kept mentioning her, just as she often spoke of him. Jin-woo woke up and called Seol-ah to thank her for bringing him home. He wanted to treat her to spicy hot pot and give himself one last chance. Jin-woo confessed that he was going abroad, possibly never to return, because he couldn't bear the constant pain of thinking about her and torturing himself. He asked Seol-ah if he could hold her one last time. With a heavy heart, he tried to say goodbye, but deep down, he hoped Seol-ah would stop him. Seol-ah couldn't bear to let Jin-woo go, and hearing her say so made him incredibly happy. To get his mother's approval, Jin-woo pretended that he wanted to become a monk and even suggested that Hwa-young join him in the monastic life. While waiting for his mother to think it over, Jin-woo worked at Young-woo's new restaurant, disregarding his image. Gradually, he earned his mother-in-law's understanding, but now the challenge was to convince his own mother. Together, Jin-woo and Seol-ah held hands tightly as they entered the house. Hwa-young was so shocked that she demanded Seol-ah let go, but Seol-ah softly responded that this time she wouldn't let go. She made an effort to comfort Hwa-young. Even as she gently urged Jin-woo to go cook, Seol-ah admitted that she came back this time because she truly loves Jin-woo. She also promised to be filial to Hwa-young. Hwa-young was moved by Seol-ah's words and finally decided to allow the two of them to be together. In the end, Jin-woo and Seol-ah were able to live a happy life. This concludes the entire story of the drama. Thank you all for watching, and see you in the next video.